Where are you shaming yourself? Where are you telling yourself, no, don't be that way. You can't be weak. You can't be vulnerable. You can't be that. You have to be strong. You have to be good. You have to be a good this, a good that. There are so many instances in our lives where we judge ourselves. We are our own worst critic. So find those areas, find those places, those planets, even find those places either on your birth chart or in your life where you are feeling maybe restricted, you are limiting yourself, sabotaging, and not allowing the full expression of your being. Like Amy said earlier, authenticity is at the core of it all, and it will literally open doors for you.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. Today, my guest is a repeat guest because we had such a fascinating discussion the first time she sat down with us that I just had to have her back because there was a whole boatload of other stuff that I wanted to talk to her about, in addition to her being a wealth of really cool, interesting information and just a really cool person that I enjoy spending time with. So I know that you probably enjoyed the episode that we did with her already. If you haven't heard it, you definitely want to check it out. It was number 85 with Fatima-Zahra. And we talked about symbols, sacred geometry, how symbology is super important, how it's part of our everyday life in every culture, whether you are aware of it or not, it is affecting you. And we also go into a little bit about my training in biogeometry, which is just blowing up right now because it's an amazing tool to help us have more harmony in our lives. And so that's a really cool episode. Definitely check that out if you're resonating with this type of stuff. That's 85. And Fatima-Zahra is a holistic astrologer and just a really interesting, she's got a very interesting take on astrology because she has such a broad range of information in areas that she pulls into the picture. And I feel like, I don't know how old she is chronologically, but I know she's kind of on the young side, and she's like a wise woman in a young woman's body. She's like the wisdom and just the presence and the knowledge that and the articulation is very, very impressive. Very impressed with this young lady. So some of the really cool things we talk about on this show is, hey, wow, did you know, I did not know this, that, because I'm not an astrologer, but did you know that the astrological signs and the elements and the planets have a gender? I mean, I do know, like, the earth is considered the feminine, the mother, and fire is the masculine, and all that stuff. I did know that, but I didn't know the relevance of astrology and how different planets have what can be considered a gender. So we get into a really, really, really important topic on this show, and very, very appropriate from my show, Awakening Aphrodite, because we get into the great polarities, and that is basically talking about the gender, and everything has a duality. Regardless, it's not a sexual thing, it's a essence, it's an energy. I talk about this a lot in some of the early episodes of my show. Check that out if you're getting triggered or confused. Okay, and this is the duality that's in all of us, the good and the bad, the up and the down, the light and the dark, all that stuff. And as I say all the time, it's about having the wisdom and discretion to know when it's appropriate to utilize either one. But the great polarities are a constant dance, a constant flow, and sometimes a battle that's going on around us, both inside us and collectively, particularly in the human consciousness, the world at large. We are seeing the result of a very imbalanced polarity, the toxic masculine polarity that's in all of us, by the way, whether you're feminine or not. It's just imbalanced and resulted in a lot of problems that we're seeing in the world right now, not only ecologically, but even just, in our culture. So we get into that. And we also talk about the elements of the planets, how astrology and our birth planets are related to the elements and the masculine and feminine in us. And we get into the luminaries, particularly the sun and the moon, and especially the moon, because the moon is something that's very near and dear to me, that only in the last few years, by the way, as I have awakened my Aphrodite, that the moon is a symbol of the feminine. And it's a big part of awakening Aphrodite in you is the moon, because she is the reflective force. She is the intuitive force. She's the going within and being still, and the change. She's the change. And she's also, so I also talk about in the episode how the moon is something a lot of people aren't aware, but the moon represents our authenticity. And it's the struggle of doing the things that are dutiful and feeling like you have to be responsible and a good mom, a good friend, a good whatever, but abandoning yourself. And the moon is symbolic for all that stuff. You can throw all that in the wheelbarrow. That has to do with the moon symbology. So I love this discussion with Fatima today because we get into the moon pretty deep. And I talk about the relationship between Aphrodite and the moon, the importance of us having reflection and downtime, the particular importance for women to set up their lives around the phases of the moon, the cause and effect nature of astrology versus the correlative concept. Which one is it? Fatima clears that up about what astrology really is. And she talks to us about the archetypes of the father and the mother and the 12 signs of the astrological landscape and their unique polarities. Like I said in the beginning of the intro, I didn't know that each sign had a gender, if you will, or a polarity is really more accurate to describe it, and how these polarities affect our personalities as well as our lives. But most importantly, why they are significant and what they're here to teach us about ourselves. We also talk about authenticity, the power of choices, how the elements of the moon can help us with that. And Fatima brings up something I never heard of before called the black moon Lilith. And we get into the dark feminine and the shadow aspect. Really fascinating discussion. Ego repressed emotions versus the shadow are discussed. And then we close with, I asked Fatima about, what about men? What should they know about the moon? Because a lot of people do know the moon is kind of the feminine and the sun is pretty much the masculine. But how is the moon energy relative for a man? And that leads us into a discussion about the importance of men making it a priority for themselves for their self-care, right? That's super important. And how men need to feel safe and how men can feel shame and vulnerability and have difficulty talking about their emotions. Men need to awaken their Aphrodite just like we do, everyone. So, we're all human. And as I say all the time, there's more that unites us than divides us, that's for sure. So the role of the divine feminine and our ability to tap into our emotions and feel safe and be vulnerable, but still powerful and authentically, truly ourselves is a big part of the beautiful feminine in all of us and awakening Aphrodite too. And finally, I talk about how the divine feminine, the essence is to inspire love and energy and passion in others. That's her magic. Her magic is about inspiring others. It's not about nagging and bullying and manipulating and using your body or your beauty or your words to try to manipulate others as a woman. It's about tapping into the love and the truth in you and just you shining you. And then that you being you and your passion and your love and your flow and your joy, do you think that's going to inspire others and be very attractive? You better believe it, my friend. It sure is. And that's the power of the divine feminine. So put a pen in that one, okay? All right, so enjoy this amazing second appearance of my beautiful guest, Fatima-Zahra. All right, welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. My guest today is repeat by your demands, my friend Fatima-Zahra. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. I'm thrilled to have you here. Are you still located in Paris?
I am at the moment.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so we're going to get right into it today because the reason why I'm having you back is because, first of all, you just are a wealth of important knowledge and information and ancient wisdom, but we ran out of time. We had such a great discussion the last time that you were a guest on the show. We didn't even get to half the topics we wanted to get into, and honestly, I could probably have you on about 20 times with all you know. But I'm thrilled to have you back. Today, we're going to get into archetypes, a little bit about the great polarities, the masculine, feminine. It's a big part of my show, as you know. It's a big part of what's going on in the world right now, not only inside ourselves, but collectively as a race, the human race. The planet is trying to harmonize and balance its energies. We are trying to harmonize our energies. So super timely topic. It's obviously very, very popular right now. Out in pop culture, people talking about the masculine, feminine. So let's hear what you have to say about it. Where do you want to start with this? Do you want to start with archetypes, or what's first on your heart?
Well, first of all, I think what you just said is really important with the collective. This is something that we're seeing all around us in pop culture, of course, and on the internet, on Instagram, everyone's speaking about it, but it is also seen and felt in our societies. Everything is changing and rapidly shifting. So I think reconnecting with this divine polarities and what they entail is something that's really important. So I think we could start with speaking about how these divine feminine, divine masculine express themselves through astrology as an example. That would be a great start, I think. What do you think?
I think that would be beautiful because, again, a lot of the content on my show covers the polarities, especially some of the earlier episodes when I was establishing the mission of the show. But to really have the tweak of it to get into how that relates to astrology, I think would be beautiful for you to share with us about that. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what's amazing about astrology, and it's part of why I love it so much, is that there's so many different layers to how we can approach astrology. And of course, when we first begin astrology, it looks like learning about our personality, how we interact with others, how we think, how we feel, how we maybe act, etc. But when we go a little bit beyond that, we begin seeing some common traits and cycles and trends that speak to us about our psyche, about our internal makeup. This is a guidebook or a roadmap, if you want, to our soul's purpose and unraveling in a way. It's how we are meant to express ourselves the best way we can, because everyone is different and everyone has a unique way of doing so. And in astrology, what's really interesting is that there is feminine and masculine planets. Of course, it is not gender biased, it's not based on gender at all. There's nothing gender biased about astrology, but it is linked with the elements, and some planets and some signs are going to be more feminine in their nature, and others are going to be more masculine. And in astrology, and just like other alchemical or magical traditions, the masculine is the active force. These are the air and fire signs. Maybe they're going to take more actions, they're going to be more outgoing, more expressive in their nature. And then we have the feminine. The feminine signs and planets are more introspective. This is the water signs, the earth signs, and some planets, of course, who correlate with this idea of receiving, of nurturing, of taking care of. And when we begin looking at these modalities, these elements in astrology in this manner, we can see how in our birth chart there are some pointers or indicators that tell us how we express our conscious or divine masculine. I'm going to say this word a lot today, but this is a way for us to express it. And not everyone has the same way of being active in life, just like not everyone receives in the same way. So one of the great starts, because of course there's so many different layers to this, one of the amazing example of this would be the sun and the moon, because the sun and the moon, well, they're present in all cultures, in all religions or traditions. Wherever we go, there's the sun and there's the moon. And it is really a beautiful, beautiful way to begin understanding this polarity, this dance of the divine feminine and masculine within us, and of course outside.
Yes, I think that's very interesting, and something that I've studied, because I've been deeply studying about the moon in particular, um, is that I didn't realize that although most cultures have always associated the moon with the feminine, some didn't. Some associated the sun with the feminine. And I thought that was just really interesting. But is it safe to say, Fatima, that the majority, like 90% of ancient cultures, thought of the moon as the feminine?
I would say yes,
Yeah,
95%.
95.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe around I think that too. Yes.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about their particular unique traits. Like what makes the sun considered by people to be a symbol of the masculine, and the moon in particular to be a symbol of the feminine?
Well, that's an interesting question. In astrology, the sun is not necessarily the masculine, but it is a masculine. And
Okay.
the way it is a masculine is because the sun speaks to us about our conscious mind. This is what we strive to become. This is the message we come with. This is our core, our identity, our sense of self. So it is active on its own, because when you are trying to learn who you are, trying to express your uniqueness, your creativity, it has to happen by doing things, by running after an ideal, a message, a desire, a purpose. And the moon, on the other hand, is our divine nurturer. This is who we are behind closed doors. This is an energy that we do not have to really work towards. This is something that usually happens. Of course, there's mitigating factors in astrology, but in general, the moon is that energy in which we are naturally comfortable, that comes instinctively, because it is linked with this unconscious. This is our unconscious, our way of receiving, of nurturing, and taking care of things. And of course, in astrology, the sun and the moon can also talk to us or represent our mother and our father. So the moon can relate physically, like this can be literally our mother, and the sun can sometimes, speak to us about our father or father figure, of course, for people who don't have direct biological parents. So that's a really interesting meaning, I would say, because it makes overall sense with why people saw the moon or saw the sun as feminine or masculine. Of course, there's other reasons. The moon is linked with water, so the tides are ruled by the moon, and plants, things that grow, life is linked with the idea of motherhood. And not females, women all around the world have their menstrual cycle usually synced with the moon's phases. So that's part of why the moon was always considered as feminine in 90% of the world. And in astrology, it's a really beautiful thing to look up to, because sometimes there's um, a misunderstanding of the messages of our innate sun and moon. And that's something that, as an astrologer, I see a little bit, um, not just a little bit, I see a lot of people, especially women, struggle with how they can actually make these two parts of themselves work together, especially if they are not speaking the same language, if they're not in the same sign. And yeah, that's something that absolutely fascinates me, is how we can link these two parts of us, our father and our mother, not just our real father and mother, but our inner father and mother, and make them create some magic, dance, and do crazy stuff.
Yes, and that they have that important reciprocal relationship that's collaborative, I think is important. There's so much I want to kind of unpack with what you just said, because, we could just talk hours about the symbolism and the aspects of the sun and the moon. But I can share that in my studies, even with tarot, that I learned that my personality sign is actually the moon in tarot, which is 18, which is the outward expression of the hermit, which is 9 in the world. And of course, as you mentioned, the moon is the ultimate symbol of the feminine, the cycles, the rhythms of life. And of course, the moon is not the direct source of life force and energy, which is what the sun is. However, the moon is a reflection of the energy. So the reflective quality of the moon, and I mentioned this, I think it's episode maybe 2 of my show, when I was explaining the name of the show, the podcast, Aphrodite. And a lot of the images and paintings of her is her with a mirror, holding up a mirror. And I explained how a lot of people misinterpreted that to think that she was so vain, because she's also known as the goddess of beauty and love and all that. But it wasn't that she was vain. She was holding the mirror because she was symbolizing the feminine skill and importance and the art of reflection, self-reflection. And that's what the moon symbolizes, in that we need to reflect on ourselves. That means, the moon goes dark through the phases, right? So there's time when we just don't need to be on all the time, which is a very important thing for what a lot of people are going through right now, particularly women. With Instagram and 24/7 access and all this stuff, we always feel like we have to be on our best. But we have to also remember the greater cyclical nature of life, in the way that we can learn, as demonstrated by nature, that everything has a cycle. It's not always time to be on. And that self-reflection time, the time to pull back from the spotlight, not be the sun. And what I'm getting at is, in my life, a lot of what led to my burnout personally was I was the sun all the time. I was running this big health club. I had like 32 employees. I was, trying to do what was best. I think we talked about it a little bit in the last episode you were on, for other people. But it's not in my chart, so to speak, to be the sun, although I have a lot of energy and I can be motivating and all that stuff and a strong life force. Really, what's more true to my nature is, and also, which you can comment on too, is my moon apparently is in Cancer. So it
Oh, wow.
so it explains a lot about my nature, right? So
It's at home.
yes, I have this real strong moon energy about me. So what I learned is, okay, you have to pull back and self-reflect and have your alone time, do that hermit time, so you can shine bright like the sun. But without that, which I wasn't giving myself, I was always the sun. I burnt out. And that's what the sun will do, right? Too much sun will dry out everything. So did you want to comment on that? I know I just threw a lot at you.
Well, actually, I understand the intuitiveness and the beauty of what you do, and it's really fascinating, because when the moon is in its own house, like it's in its own sign, if we may say, it's feeling at home. So there's a lot of emotions that come up, and the cyclic nature that you're speaking about, which is something universal, like we all go through it, but I guess you need it even more. You need to go through these phases of waning and waxing and showing up and then being more introspective. So I think that's a beautiful message, not just for those listening who have their moon in Cancer, but for all moons. We all need that times, like you said, of reflection. And the crazy part is that in hustle culture, we forget about that. We forget that we do need to rest. We need to rest so that we can feel better the next day and do
without guilt.
Absolutely. So honoring the cyclic nature of life, and also syncing our life with the moon's phases, is something that can be really transformative. This is something I absolutely love to do. It's like just planning for projects or events even, or things, with what's the moon's doing at the moment, what's happening. Am I in a phase where I should be running after things, or where I should be maybe more analyzing or observing situations or letting go? Sometimes it's just better to let go of things and not necessarily run after so many goals, so many objectives. So yes, that's absolutely fundamental, I think, to live in harmony with nature, like you mentioned, which is really important. At the end of the day, we keep on learning astrology, tarot, Reiki, all of these
So
beautiful and
much.
fascinating fields. But at the end of the day, everything is in nature already. Everything
It's
we
right
learn
there.
and study is literally what's happening all around us. We just have to look for it, or maybe look at it a different way, not just look for it.
So glad you mentioned that about how now you're trying to live a lot of your life according to the moon phases as a woman. I did the same. I bought a moon calendar about a year or two ago when I really started to deeply get into my study. And when I started the show too, it was right around the same time, coincidentally. And I'll notice the same thing, Fatima. I noticed that okay, I have marked like when the full moon is. I was born about 48 hours before a full moon, so I have that marked. Yep. And then when the dark moon is and the new moon and all that's literally on my calendar, like my schedule is. And sometimes I'll notice, like if I have travel coming up or a show or whatever, something going on, a social event, I'm like, ooh, it's a dark moon. Maybe I don't want to go. Like it's just a cool way to live your life because you feel like you're in harmony. You're in harmony with life.
Yes, I think that's beautiful, as also at the end of the day, consciously thinking about it, but when you look back, you realize that some of the times where you didn't feel like going to that party was a dark moon or something of that sort, or maybe you had a promotion just at the time of a full moon. Sometimes things happen, not sometimes, I believe in my life, things happen in such a timely manner. It's actually fascinating. It's so fascinating when we dive into that path, and it's so rewarding as well.
I agree. It's become kind of a theme for many of my guests. We end up talking about the moon, like the show we did on the NLM water wand. My guest with Dolph, and we talked about the phases of the moon and how it literally affects the water molecules and the charge of the water at different times of the month is different. Um, and you mentioned how it controls the tides and the weather. The sun gets all the props and all the respect, I think. But it's really interesting because without the moon, we wouldn't have also the seasons and the changes. That's why another reason why the moon is a feminine, because of the cyclical nature. Women, our physiology isn't designed to be that constant. The masculine energy, and maybe back to what we were talking about at the beginning about the divine masculine feminine concept, these are principles, not genders, like you said. They're principles. That the feminine is the changing, it's the emotional, it's the creativity, it's the waxing and the waning of the moon, right? Hence the term. Whereas the sun is the constant, pretty much comes up the same time every day, pretty much goes down the same time every night. It's the present constant that can withstand the changes, and that's the masculine in its best form. Did you want to comment on that at all?
No, I find it a beautiful, such a beautiful description of it. At the end of the day, when we look at the sun and the moon, they speak to us about our inner chaos, and our inner rationality, or I don't even have the word for it, but like you said, this constant, eternal spark of life. And then there's chaos and things moving and things changing. And if we lean towards one side more than the other, the imbalance is bound to happen. And this is something I see a lot, particularly with sun-based astrology. Sometimes people who label themselves with their sun signs and kind of, make it like a life mission to be just their sun sign. Sometimes some people lean towards the moon side a little bit too much. And I think finding a balance and learning that in astrology, as an example, these are only pointers. They are just, like you said, mirrors. They are a reflection of something going on within. They are not us. They speak to us about sides of us that we can harness, that we can use, that we can tap into. but they are, at the end of the day, tools that can help us fulfill our life's mission. They are not here to limit us in any way, shape, or form. This is a little bit off topic, but it's like people who blame their entire life's misery on Mercury going retrograde. Like, yes, it has a link, but it's not the reason why you're feeling this way since you were a child.
Yeah.
It is not that that cause and effect. There's no cause and effects. It's just correlations and meanings, reflections, and symbols. At the, like we spoke about symbols the last time we were chit-chatting on the show. Everything is a symbol, and the sun and the moon, in my opinion, are one of the clearest and most universal symbols. We can go to, I don't know, a village in Africa or Australia or Asia. People know what the sun and the moon represent. If you tell them what's a father, what's a mother, they know what these archetypes represent. So that's why maybe in how we view the divine polarities, these are the most obvious archetypes we think of. The father, the strict, the rigid, the loving, the active, the breadwinner, father. And then we have, the caring, loving, protective, and sometimes fierce mother. But there's other layers and aspects to it too in astrology besides the sun and the moon.
Right on. I'm thinking it might be helpful for the listeners and the viewers if you are prepared to talk about the you mentioned that the signs, the polarities of the signs in astrology are associated with different elements or whatever. Like,
yes.
Are you prepared to just share? Because
yes.
people might be thinking, I don't know what I am. Like, I'm an Aquarius.
All right.
However, I learned that apparently like I mentioned, my moon is in Cancer, which is significant. So I don't know what any of that really means. But maybe you can talk briefly, just for the viewer and the listener, to help apply these polarity things. Like, okay, well, I'm a Pisces. What does she mean? Like, how does that apply to me?
Absolutely. So for anyone listening, all of us have the entire 12 signs in our birth chart. Believe it or not, we are all the 12 signs combined, and it's all about playing with these signs and with these energies. So your sun is in a certain sign the day you were born, and your moon is in a certain sign the day you were born. And going through the 12 signs, we begin with Aries, and Aries is a fire sign, making it a masculine, like a divine masculine sign. So if your sun or moon is in Aries, you have that quality, that energy within you. Taurus is a feminine sign. Gemini is an air sign, making it a masculine sign. Wait, maybe to make it a little bit easier, I'm gonna go with the masculine ones.
There you go.
So the that's gonna be a lot easier. So the masculine signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And the feminine signs are the earth and water signs, so Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, and Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So if you are an air or a fire sign, or if you have your sun or moon in a fire or air sign, you have that masculine energy within you. And if you have them in a water or earth sign, you have more feminine qualities. And to make it a little bit more easier, if you have your moon in a fire sign, this sparks some frustration in some people. Like, I know some women, as an example, that I knew back in Morocco, who had their moon in Aries, and in their societies, being like their way of being feminine was judged by others because it was like too aggressive, too this, too that, too brave, while in reality, all the signs, whether feminine or masculine, have a beautiful and unique way of expressing that feminine energy. It just taints the beautiful energy of the moon. And the same goes for the sun. People who have their sun in feminine signs are maybe more introspectives. These are the introverts, the people who are maybe not all about getting the attention that they want or need. Of course, I'm making exceptions. There's lots of exceptions based on the birth chart of the native. There is so many outgoing feminine signs out there. But what I'm trying to say here is, no matter which category you fall under, it is there for a purpose, and it has a message for you, and it is here to teach you how to harmonize, especially when you have different elements in your sun and in your big three, in your sun, moon, or rising signs. When they are in different elements, it creates, actually, it's a beautiful thing. Like, you would think that if you had just the same elements all over your chart, that sometimes create having that too much energy. We feel like we are too reliant on one element only, so we feel foreign when we are dealing with other situations, with other life events that need us to maybe be more proactive or more receiving, etc. So that's a beautiful thing to look into and try to harmonize as much as possible, or just learn about. If for the listeners who have no idea what we're speaking about, just Google. If you Google moon calculator, you can know in just a few seconds where your moon where the moon was the day you were born, and that can give you already a lot of indications about, some of the areas of growth, of opportunities, and maybe some challenges also. But at the end of the day, all good lessons to go with.
And of course, they can contact you
Yes.
to help them personally, which would be much more beneficial than Googling it, right? I mean, let's just get right to how does this apply to me? So on that note, you made me think about, okay, so thank you for giving that list. I think that should be helpful for people. And now I'm thinking perhaps you can categorize the umbrella for, all right, we've got the masculine polarity type signs, and then we've got the feminine ones, which is fascinating to me. I did not know any of that. I didn't realize the signs had a gender, so to speak, or a polarity essence might be a more accurate way to say it. But for me, I have one in each. Like, my sun sign is the Aquarius, which is the masculine, which, as I understand, is a mental element, right? And it's the also the element of fire. Those are also two masculine elements, and fire. So I'm it's been a story of my life to just try to get the hell out of my head. Another reason why I named my show Awakening Aphrodite is to balance my own energy and feel more and think less, which I think happens to a lot of business-driven women in our modern culture. So I have that strong mental component, but I also have a very strong spiritual component. So there's my fire, my two masculine. But then in my moon sign, because I'm a Cancer, I'm also super strong in water. I feel very deeply. And I've always been empathetic to others in a good and a bad way, feeling their feelings, whether I want to or not. And I also have a strong earth element. I've been an athlete all my life and very physical. And I love to dance. I love to be physical. And I love the earth. I love Mother Earth. I need to literally ground myself every day, or I'm like a freak. So, so I have signs in both. So Fatima, what would you say to someone like me who's got a sign in each polarity?
Well, that's really interesting. Actually, when you were talking, all I could imagine was a beautiful avant-garde artist with lots of ideas running around, but also lots of intuition and feelings. And because air and water are not compatible per se, it can be difficult for some people, especially in their earlier stages of life, to make their emotions and their, not really mental, because that's more Mercury in astrology, but their consciousness and their unconscious work together in a harmonious way without maybe feeling frustrated, or sometimes having too many ideas, or not knowing which direction is it going to be, my heart or my head, which one am I going to follow.
So true.
But the beautiful thing about Aquarius is that Aquarius is not necessarily a feeler. He's the water bearer, and so a lot of people think that Aquarius is a water sign because he, in the symbol of Aquarius is a man or woman. We don't know.
A
It could
human. It's a
a
human.
human
It's
being.
supposed to be a human.
Yes.
They changed it to a man, of course.
A human being holding a cup of water and pouring it down to the nations. This is like, I don't know, Che Guevara or someone who, Gandhi, people who inspire others. They give emotions to others, but they do
Kuan
not
Yin.
hold. Absolutely. They don't really hold that emotion within. So having your moon in Cancer, I think, is such a beautiful thing because it grounds you in your body, in your emotion, in your feelings, more than maybe if you had your Mercury in your moon, sorry, in Gemini or Libra or another.
Scorpio.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In Scorpio is a water sign, so that would
Oh,
have
it is.
been
Oh, okay.
tempered.
Oops.
So
Okay.
if because it is in a water sign, I think that's a strength. Of course, it is one of the most emotional lunar placement for the moon to be in Cancer because it is at home, so it feels a lot. It is empathic. It literally soaks in the energies of others. So that's beautiful, but you have to guard that beautiful empathy of yours, or else that heart, that heart center has to be guarded more than other moon placements who maybe are, if it's a fire moon, they have less difficulties, because they are more outgoing, more the energy is outwards, if I may say, while you are retaining and holding light in your body physically. So I absolutely love that combination. I think it's working perfectly for you.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty complicated, I guess. It's got that dichotomy, that's for sure. The two polarities for sure. But that really ultimately is what it's all about, right? It's about the sacred marriage, the union of the two, and in all of us, And it's interesting that you said that about the moon, and because it made me think about one of the shadow aspects of the moon is deception. Okay, and that's one of the things you have to worry about, but not only deception from others, but deception of yourself, because like in tarot, the moon is also a symbol of authenticity and choices. And in the tarot card, there's two pillars in the card, a pillar on the right and the left, with the river, the water element, the symbol of emotions and feelings in the middle. And the moon reminds us that every day we have a choice. We have to make a conscious choice if we're going to live according to our authentic, true heart self, or if we're going to live in the false ego self out of a sense of duty. How often do we all do that, right? I got to do this. I should do this. I got to be responsible. I got to all your whole list, right? When your soul and your heart is like, but this isn't really who you are. So one thing that I learned about the moon is that it is symbolic of really going within, which, back to what you were saying earlier, requires you to reflect, withdraw, pull back, not be the sun, and reflect on yourself and go within deep, which is another symbol of the moon, is going within. How do I feel about this? What is it I really want? What are my true desires? What is my soul yearning for? These are all the symbols of the moon, to get in touch with that once a month, or if not every day. And then you make a choice from your authentic self. And that's when you'll be in alignment, where in Native American medicine it's called your feet, your heart, and your spirit are all in the same place. You're standing in the same place. You're aligned, united, and then you're in your most power, because you're acting from your authentic true self, regardless of maybe what might happen. But that's when you're in most power. Otherwise, you're deceiving yourself, and that's the shadow of the moon, right? It's deception of yourself or other, where we put on masks and we are who everyone thinks we should be, or who we think they think we should be, and we present a false self, which is not true to your moon.
That's such a beautiful beautiful message. I absolutely love the Native American saying that you said. Was it to have your feet, your heart, and your
Yes.
mind at the
Yep.
same place?
You're all in the same place. It's like you call
I
your
love it.
spirit back and you are where your feet are. And that's when it's basically even physically like your spine lines up. So your chakras and your energy and your life force flows and you're connecting the heavens and the earth as above, so below, like the magician, right? The Hermetic principle. So that's really the only way, though, we can line up is when we're true to our authentic self and we're not just saying what we think is going to keep the peace or make others happy or be who they expect us to be and they need us to be, and martyring ourselves. I did that for most of my life, was martyring myself. Why? Well, basically to secure love and security, because I was afraid of being abandoned by family or friends or whatever relationships. So just trying to be what others wanted me to be more than really what my soul was saying, and making myself small and not going to big conventions and speaking in front of large audiences because my partner was like, what are you doing that for? Or whatever, so I'd say no. I mean, that's not being true to my authentic nature and going against my moon personality in, so I know all about that, which is probably why I can talk about it so much.
That's so beautiful. I love it at the, like, when we look at it, it is true that the sun is our ability to speak, when our moon is our ability to listen. And when you pay attention to your moon, you begin to listen to what your soul wants. Like you said earlier, this is the urges of your soul. And if we're not listening, if we're not honoring that side of us, we can't listen. There's too much noise and chatter from our sun, from the world, not just our sun. There's so much chatter around the world already. So if we cannot pause down for a minute, look at the moon, look at ourselves, reflect, we're going to be someone we're not fully, and we're not even going to be aware of it. And I think that's the worst part, is that when we deny our moon the ability to speak to us, we also deny our sun the ability to be at its best, because how can we know who we are if we don't pause and listen?
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to add that yes, the sun is the symbol of the self, the ego, the expression in the world, that masculine, the energy, the out there. Here I am. This is who I am, whereas you can't really be your authentic expression, sun, masculine, out there energy, if you didn't do the work of the moon, of going within to learn who is my authentic self, who really am I. So otherwise you're just missing the mark, right? So they're both super important.
Absolutely.
Together.
Yes. And it reminds me that in astrology, there's this beautiful multi-layered dimension to the divine feminine. So like we said earlier, there's the moon, of course, representing the mother. But another, this is not a planet or a luminary per se in astrology, but it's called the black moon Lilith, which is an angle in the sky, and it speaks about the dark phase of the moon. This is literally the darkest phase of our lunar entity, if we want. And Lilith in mythology is said to be the first woman who came before Eve. So this was a woman who was not made out of a man. This is a woman who was independent, who was doing her own thing. Yes. And in astrology, this black moon Lilith can sometimes indicate to us how we act or how we are when we are wounded. The word sin has a religious connotation, but it's not like that. It's more how we are when we are feeling wrath, feeling that primordial anger and frustration in a way. This is our dark side. And I feel that most of the times where the black moon Lilith has an impact on us, it is, like you just said, when we don't listen to our moon. And this energy can sometimes play out in some people's lives dramatically if they do not listen to their moon. I'll give the example with my own chart. I have my moon in Libra, so I have a Virgo sun, my moon is in Libra, and my black moon Lilith is in Leo. So when I do not listen to my moon, which is saying to me, be in harmony, find harmony, calm down, be harmonious, be aesthetic, find, diplomacy and ways to ease your, talk your way through your emotions, calm down, be the peacemaker in your own life. This is what my moon is telling me. And when I'm not living through that principle, when I'm not allowing my moon to shine bright, of course, in a healthy way, not in a people-pleasing way, in a healthy manner, sometimes I will fall in my ego, because my black moon Lilith is in Leo, and Leo is linked with this idea of feeling ourselves. But when it is linked with the black moon Lilith, it can manifest itself as being centered around the self, or feeling like, okay, I have to do this, I have to make this happen for myself, or else no one else will. I have to fend for myself, this is my territory, the Leonesque way, in a way of guarding the territory.
Competitive.
Exactly. And because of this understanding, like, this is what I love about astrology, is that when you start learning about these placements within us, you understand that there is a message, there is a beauty in learning that, okay, at my worst, this is how I can be, but I also have a best, and I can choose which one I would rather lean towards, not to shame or to suppress my worst, because that worst is helping me in certain ways. Like, if someone fights me in the street, I guarantee that my black moon Lilith is gonna, come up and fend for me. But what I'm trying to say here is, when we understand the moon, it is really, really primordial, because it can help us get rid of certain aspects that can show up unexpectedly, either through our birth chart for the people who are interested in astrology, or if we just want to be general, when we are in denial about who we are, we can sometimes be, a-holes. We can be complete a-holes. So, yeah.
I love that. You're just amazing. I never heard of the Black Moon Lilith. So would that be similar to the Dark Night of the Soul?
Not really. It is
Okay.
more, it's really more about our chaotic nature. Sometimes the black moon Lilith is not all bad. Like, I'm not saying that the black moon Lilith is the worst we can be, but
Is it an archetype? I don't really understand what it is then. It's not a
it's
phase. It's not a
it's an angle. Actually, it's calculated through the moon's position in your birth chart, and it's like the ascendant. The ascendant is the eastern horizon the minute you were born, and the black moon Lilith is an angle calculated with the moon's position. So it's
an aspect. It's an aspect of your birth chart.
Yes, it's a point. It's like
okay,
a point
yeah.
in your birth
okay.
chart, and
Got
it falls in a certain house, in a
so
certain
everyone
sign.
has it. Okay.
Exactly. Everyone has it.
Got
and
it.
It's not really an active, because it's like a minor point in our birth chart, but it does express itself sometimes, and it represents the archetype of the dark feminine. This is the
shadow.
Exactly, the shadow side. For me, it's literally the shadow side of the moon, because you mentioned that earlier. It's that which we do not want to face. We don't want to face that shadow most of the times, but learning about it can be interesting, and help us maybe make peace with that side of us.
Okay, so would you say that that's something then, since it's determined by your birthday, time, place on your chart, would it be something, Fatima, that is inherent at birth, regardless of what happens to you in your life? Because I know our shadows which we all have, can be aspects of us that, because of life situations, has created a shadow aspect of you. Or in another way of saying a shadow is something you're repressing, right? Like, okay, I hate the fact, let's just say I'm prejudiced, or I'm whatever, I don't know, whatever I am that I don't like about myself, and I'll just repress it. Or let's say I grew up, I was homosexual, I liked women, and I was strict Catholic family, and that was a no-no, a big sin, so I repress it, so that becomes my shadow. So is the dark moon Lilith aspect of us something that's inherent, or is it something that's learned through life experience, that shadow?
That's an interesting question, but I think in astrology, the thing is, there's many shadows. Like, we have many shadows. The ones you were mentioning about life situations or suppressed feelings, I think that's slightly different, but I was more talking about the shadow of the moon aspect, the intuitive, the receptive side, all of the archetypes linked with the mother, the moon as the mother, and each shadow directly. It's like Eve
Okay.
and Lilith. But of course, there's many other places in our, of course, even our sun can have shadows. Like, we forget that, but our sun can express itself through its shadow, through its lower expression, through, and have the blind sides, if I may say blind, how we say blind, blind sides, where the energy is not really being filtered. It's slightly changing depending on how we express it. But no, the black moon Lilith is more, in my opinion, the dark side of the moon, of our moon, and sometimes an energy that we quite literally do not like in us, and sometimes don't see or understand. So maybe it will, not maybe, but I'm having a hard time finding my words.
You try to repress it because you don't like it about yourself, is what you're saying?
Sometimes when we suppress this energy, it's like a bottle. It's like, if you keep the genie in the bottle, someday it's gonna
Burst.
blow out, exactly, burst. But when we understand this energy, it is not something we suppress. It becomes a source of power. The black moon Lilith is also linked with magic, as an example, or power. This is the womanhood, the mother who is not bonded with, who doesn't have an obligation to be with her children, but who chooses, like you said earlier, with the moon, and having to deal with these choices. The moon as a mother has a biological link with whatever she creates, whether it's a real baby or a project or a love relationship or whatever. She is bonded with that. So there is a codependency at times, while the black moon Lilith can help us see beyond. Like, what does this help me with? Is this something that can help me grow as an individual? Is this something that I can use for myself? Not, it sounds selfish, but it's really not. It sounds like that because, well, in society, everything that is sentenced or phrased in a way that serves the self is meant to be selfish. But the black moon Lilith is not afraid to be selfish, and I think finding a balance between those two, yes, I do have to be a good mother, I do have to protect people, but at the same time, I do have to protect myself too. I think those two energies have to be reconciled at some point.
I think that's critical what you just said, because you're so right. I mean, all these dark energies and the shadow and all these things, and don't be egotistical and the ego's bad. People have it all wrong. We're all of it. And that's the whole point. It's so ironic to me, because the whole point of, if you repress any part of who you are, even the stuff you judge as bad or shameful or not right, that's only going to grow and fester, because it's all of who you are. That you are your ego. Without your ego, you wouldn't get dressed. I mean, the ego isn't a bad thing. You know what I mean? It's essential for your individualization. And in Jungian psychology, it's all about self-actualization. And we know even in holistic health and wellness, it's about being your whole self, the good and the bad. So to your point about the black moon Lilith, what I'm hearing you say is, it ultimately leads to self-empowerment and self-knowledge, because you're knowing your tendency to kind of, I see your struggle for the word, it's not that it's a bad thing, but to go into, for lack of a better word, your shadow aspect of something, to be aware of that is very empowering. So for example, your mother example that you gave, if you acknowledge in your conscious brain, and this is where the shadow is no longer a shadow. The shadow can come out into the light because your consciousness makes the subconscious conscious, and then it's no longer a shadow. And when it's no longer a shadow, it's no longer controlling your programming, okay? But that's when you get really empowered. So to your mother example, the mother might acknowledge, okay, well, now I'm an empty nester. My kids are almost grown and they're pretty much independent, and I'm feeling like insecure and insignificant, like I lost kind of my identity. So now you start acknowledging this codependent tendency you might be having, like, all right, but I want to make sure my kids still need me. They want my approval, or wow, they're getting a little too independent. What about me? So that can be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm thinking is perhaps that's an expression of the dark moon Lilith or the black moon Lilith expressing itself, because you're acknowledging that part of you. Is that right?
That could be. I mean, as an example, if someone has the black moon Lilith in Cancer, they could have a problem with motherhood. They could hate being a mother. They hate playing that role, but they kind of have to. And at the same time, while they hate playing that role, they love playing it in other areas of their lives. So each placement of the black moon Lilith can tell us of the things that we will kind of hate to say out loud. Like to go back to my own black moon Lilith, I wouldn't like to be called selfish, but at times I do get selfish, and that's like where there's a fine line, if I may say. When we understand our black moon, we understand that there's some things that, although we may hate in others and in ourselves, but they are there. Like you said, we are all of it, and if we don't give it love and compassion and attention, or just understanding, we are not going to go, it's not going to go well. It's going to go in extremes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say then is, now that I'm understanding it a little bit better, is perhaps it would be, when you see that, since you are aware of what your black moon Lilith is and your tendency to perhaps get selfish at times, is it then perhaps like a red flag, like that can help you be aware, that this must mean I'm out of balance. Like I need to address something in my life because I'm going into that darker energy of the selfishness. So it must mean, well, I'm not taking good care of myself. I'm overworking. Like, can it make you aware of, your life being out of balance or off course or not authentic or whatever?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's the purpose of it.
Absolutely.
There's the good in it.
Yes, absolutely. And I like how earlier you mentioned, Jungian archetypes, and how Carl Jung sees the psyche in a way. For me, in astrology, everything is linked with archetypes. And when we understand our archetypes, there is only understanding from there. When you are about to slip into something you're not, when you're about to get warrior mode, when you're about to go into a dreamer or mystic, or any other archetype that we can play in our lives. Because yes, we can play so many roles, and we tend to forget about that. We can be so plural and at the same time unique. We can have many facets, many ways of expressing ourselves, depending on the situation, on our mood, on the lunar phase. We have so many ways of expressing the beautiful things that we have inside. And that's the power of learning about our astrological birth chart, as an example, because it gives us this tool belt we have a tool belt now that we can use. When you start seeing certain things, certain elements, certain modalities, certain signs, you understand, okay, well, maybe this is about to happen. Well, this, I'm about to go mayhem. I'm about to go this way. So yeah, that's a really interesting topic.
And that's ultimately the self-empowerment, is self-knowledge, right? Because once you are aware of this is how I was born a certain way. Now, obviously, nature versus nurture, but it's a combination of both, that's for sure. And once I learned that, wow, my moon's in Cancer, it explained a lot. Once I found out my personality sign and all that stuff, it's like, okay, so then I was able to honor what I needed more. And there's only one way to find out if it's true. I tried living differently and applying it, and look at the results I got. And what do you know? My life started working better. I started sleeping better. I started feeling better, started looking better. I was just happier, so there's only one way to find out if any of this is true. But I think it's really interesting how you mentioned the Black Moon Lilith, because of all the astrologers I've known, both professionally and personally, I've never heard anyone mention it. So should we have the astrologer we're working with, if we do work with one, should we make sure they address that in our reading?
Well, not everyone, it's like asteroids, not everyone uses, not all astrologers use all the asteroids, because there's so many of them. And in speaking about the feminine, like, there's so many beautiful expressions of the feminine. There's Juno, there's Pallas, there's Ceres, there's a lot of beautiful techniques, if I may say. There's timing techniques and midpoints, all of these things in astrology that are not always going to be used. But if the listeners or the people watching us, as an example, are booking a birth chart reading and they want to know about their Black Moon Lilith, they can ask the astrologer if this is something that they work with. And I think that's something interesting to just get to know, get a taste of it, not to fearmonger or anything, but it's something, just another layer of understanding of who you are, how you interact with the world, with others, and knowing that alone can help you, do great things in life.
Self-knowledge is power. All right, I know we're getting toward the end, but can you just share with us, I feel like we have to give a shout out for the men. Any thoughts on moon energies for men? Because, back to the moon being the symbol of the feminine, the feeling nature, men get a bad rap. I love men, and I think men have a harder time expressing their feelings honestly and authentically than women, even the over masculinized women like I had been. So what can you share with us, your thoughts for men and dealing with their moon energy?
This is such a beautiful question, because it is true that when we speak about the moon, when we see articles about the moon, even some of the articles that I write about the moon are mostly centered around women, because we think that this is something that speaks to women, while in reality, all males and females have both the luminaries, both the divine polarities within them. And I think sometimes in the way the moon expresses itself when the person is a man, or defines himself or herself as a man, is suppression through circumstances. Or sometimes, of course, it can be quite literally something in the birth chart, like maybe a moon located in a 12th house or in a 6th house. There's some placements in the chart. This can be an intercepted moon. There can be many instances in astrology that could explain why the energy is bottled up, but I'm not going to go into that. But in a general fashion, I believe that because there's such a judgment from the sun towards the moon in some of these men's mental area, if I may say, they are consciously choosing not to tap into that well of power, that well of wonders. And I this reminds me of something really interesting. I don't want to, like, I hope people double check what I'm about to say, but I heard that even men have some sort of menstrual cycle in terms of hormones, not as, of course, as dramatic as women, because we have estrogens and all of these things, but also men have these these shifts and fluctuations. They just don't really pay attention to it. And the people who actually do the work, do the inner work, etc., some of these men can actually tap back into that flow. Like, even men have some sort, of course it's not the same as women, not as emotional or as as factual as women's because we are so close with the moon, but they have these links with it. So I think to go back to your question, one way that men could honor this place of them, this side of them, this side of their psyche that is sometimes overlooked, is to understand that the woman, the mother, doesn't have to be a woman, doesn't have to be something feminine. They can understand, like when they understand that emotions, feelings, intuition, all of these things are part of life. And when we block that, it's such a tragedy. And this is something that I see as an example in modern medicine. Our modern doctors are so blocked from their divine feminine that they are void of emotion. I remember going to the doctor, it's like no emotion, no empathy. It's just, this is, you have a symptom, this is what you're going to do, no, this is science. It's like really rigid. And when the moon is not being allowed to express itself in a man's life, there is no warmth, there is no creativity, there is no passion, there is no subtle nuances. There's just, you know, big buildings and fast cars and efficient systems in place and nothing in between. So for anyone listening who is a man and who wants to connect to have a better life, to feel happier, connect with your moon, honor it, do some self-care. You know, us women speak a lot about self-care, and I think men should do that too. It's something overlooked, but just doing some of the things that some men don't necessarily do all the time, like spending a day for, you know, having a spa day, or I don't know, doing their hair. I don't know what men do. But all of these,
something that their heart wants them to do. How about that? Just something rather
absolutely.
than their head. What being the good dad, the good boyfriend, the good worker, you know, like doing the shoulds, the responsibility and the sense of duty, like makes me think of the military and serving, right? How about just what does your heart want you to do? That's being in your moon energy, whether a man or a woman, because that's connecting to your soul. And I think in defense of men, they need to, like many women, to be given permission to do that. And like women that I talk a lot about on my show, to go into our heart and to be vulnerable and therefore really talk about our deep, reflective, personal emotions requires safety. We can't do that if we don't feel safe physically or emotionally with a person or relationship or situation. And men are no different than women. Men aren't going to talk about their deep feelings and the fears and insecurities and anxieties that they have because they're human. They're not going to talk about that with you if they think you're going to judge them or leave them or disrespect them or think any less of them. But good Lord, they're humans. But that's where intimacy comes in. That's where intimacy comes in, not only for the man, but for the woman or the partner, I should say. It doesn't matter what gender you are in your relationship. To have true intimacy requires vulnerability and authenticity and truth, but that requires a foundation of safety first, that you feel safe, that I can be my authentic self with you, and you're not going to leave me, judge me, berate me, shame me, or any of that stuff. And it's back to what you mentioned about the shadow, right? That we all have to admit, I have a jealous side, I have an insecure side, I have an anxious side, I have a selfish side, I have all these sides that are supposedly bad, but so do you. You know, and at different times in our lives, some are expressed more than others. And a lot of times, back to our dark moon Lilith, you know, perhaps it can be a wake-up call, like you might want to pay attention to something that's out of balance in your life, the reason why you're expressing that right now. You know, so it's all beautiful. It's all part of life school.
Absolutely. And I find it beautiful that you mentioned safety, because indeed, I think women and men both want safety in different ways. Of course, women prefer containment, men want to feel to contain, and woman wants to be contained. But that's about intimacy and safety, like you said. And in our society, where we shame men for wearing pink, for crying, for having these vulnerabilities, it can be easy to just suppress it all, to just deny it all, to just not even pay attention, not give it time of the day. Some men that I know around me can't even put words on their emotions because they don't train themselves to do that. When they meet other men in their lives, they would rather speak about certain ideas and concepts rather than emotions. And I think sometimes us women have more ease doing so because we meet other people who do that way. Like you said, there's a mirror. As women, we represent this mirror, we reflect what we see. So for any women listening who have partners, who have sacred partners in their lives, fathers, brothers, boyfriends, husbands, etc., create that space, create that safety for your man to express who they are, to reconnect with who they are without judgment, without laughter, without criticism or anything of that sort. And of course, by doing so, um, actually, if you want to do so, you can also give the example yourself. Allow yourself to be that example, lead by example, and allow him to take the lead, because of course the divine masculine, and I wouldn't say men, but the divine masculine doesn't want to be told what to do. You can't tell your man, get vulnerable, tell me what you feel. Like I am guilty of doing that myself at times. Like, how do you feel? Tell me what you feel. Well, it's easier to actually inspire the woman, the divine feminine, actually the moon's role, the Venus's role, the divine feminine as a whole has a mission, and it is to inspire and to spark lights in the masculine's energy field. And then the masculine, if he wants to accept that invitation, is going to give you everything. He's going to express his full beautiful energy and what it entails about him.
100%. Look at history. Men fight wars over women. Look at the Battle of Troy for Helen. I mean, if your man is inspired by you and your love and your respect and devotion, he will climb mountains for you. He will fight dragons for you. And then that's really what women have to understand, is that I love that you said that. It's so important that we stay in our authenticity, in our joy, in our love, in our heart, in our truth. And that alone is enough, because that's the magnetic force back to the moon. That's the attraction power. It's not the putting your booty pictures on Instagram and, all this stuff to attract the man. It's no. Stand in your power, girls. Stand in your power. Your power is within yourself, and you're tapping into your own source of joy and inspiration and truth, and live that, and you will attract the people to your life, whether it be a love partner, friends, business, whatever, that is aligned with you and is inspired by that, because they want that light. They want that energy that you're putting out, and it's like flies to light, right? So I just love that. I love our conversations. We obviously could just go on and on and on for days. And wow, I know you're in Paris right now. I'm in Florida. Actually, I wish we lived closer. I feel like we would just have many long Saturday nights over bottles of wine, chatting. Thank you so much. And I apologize that we're out of time, but I do have a hard stop today. Do you have anything else, though, just in lieu of our conversation, this beautiful conversation, that's really on your heart to share?
I would like to share that at the end of the day, whether it's the luminaries or asteroids or even planets like Venus and Mars, or even outside of astrology, whether it's the divine feminine or the divine masculine, at the end of the day, the most important thing is to know thyself, like the axiom, know thyself. By knowing who we are, by accepting some messages, the good and the bad, we can come out victorious. We can come out with seeds that we can plant and that can give us results, and not just results, but a lifestyle that we feel our best in. This is our highest expression of our full potential. So I think to anyone listening, my only advice would be to not judge yourself, because like we were speaking about the men who in society, they feel shamed about speaking or saying or doing certain things, we also do that internally. Like put that same scenario that Amy and I were just speaking about and apply it to yourself. Where are you shaming yourself? Where are you telling yourself, no, don't be that way. You can't be weak. You can't be vulnerable. You can't be that. You have to be strong. You have to be good. You have to be a good this, a good that. There are so many instances in our lives where we judge ourselves. We are our own worst critic. So find those areas, find those places, those planets, even find those places either on your birth chart or in your life where you are feeling maybe restricted, you are limiting yourself, sabotaging, and not allowing the full expression of your being. Like Amy said earlier, authenticity is at the core of it all, and it will literally open doors for you.
Yes, and I'll just add to that what I've also learned is, I love that you said about find the place in yourself and judging yourself. I've also learned, and this is a whole nother topic, but I just have to share because it's affected me so profoundly, this realization I've had very recently. When you become aware of something, of a painful, traumatic, or any kind of shameful story that you might have been running in your subconscious programming, it's one thing to be aware of it and try to release that judgment of yourself. Because as adults, we can intellectually know that something, it's okay, you were just a kid, or that was a story you were telling yourself as a child that wasn't even true. Like, let's just say your parents divorced when you were 2, and children blame themselves and think daddy left mommy because of me and whatever. So we're running the story in our little child brain, and as an adult we know that's crazy. The people get divorced for their own reasons, nothing to do with the kid necessarily, most and almost always never to do with the kid, but the kid grows up with the story, right? So you become conscious of this judgment maybe you've had of yourself. And it's one thing to become conscious of it, or to really be like, okay, I'm letting that go. I know it's not true. I need to heal this. And I've learned recently that it's another thing to share it, to speak it to someone else. Because you can process it and go loops in your head. I know it was wrong. Daddy didn't leave mommy because of me. I get it. I got to heal this. I'm now so-and-so years old. I got to get over it. But if you find, and what I'm sharing with our friends listening and watching, is I've found that by verbally saying it out loud to another human being, this is where talk therapy and support groups and all this, part of why they're so successful in healing trauma, because when you speak it, it takes on the sound energy of the vibration of the universe, and it becomes a life form, a material form, and it has much more power. That's why the words we use are so powerful in manifesting and casting spells. Again, another topic. But it has a healing capacity when you speak it out loud. So to your point of the self-judgment, yep, right on. You got to be aware of it first, right? But there's also power, what I'm adding, is to speak it like, wow, I can't believe how I was judging myself. Even, maybe that might be even just journaling, but it's more powerful if you say it to another person. Yes. And to have another human empathetically be present, hold that container, not judge it, not even reply. They're not going to counsel you or anything like that. They're just going to witness you. They're just going to hear it and let you get it out. That is the release. That's when alchemy happens and the healing can result, because you've spoken it and now it's out of you and into this atmosphere, and it can now alchemize and heal and transmute into something better. And to me, what I've learned, that's when the real healing can begin, is when you get it out.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And if I may add just
Of
a little
course,
bit,
please.
I think also another, when choosing this person to display, to share, to release this trauma or wound or pain that you're holding on to, maybe paying attention to who you are sharing this information with. That's why choosing mentors or trusted like-minded individuals is key, because I know that in a lot of instances, the people in front of us sometimes will gaslight us or cancel us, like you said, and that can lead us to having more guilt. And it's like we shared something, and then because of the way it was received, we're gonna soak it right in. So
Shut it
maybe
down.
exactly,
Out of
especially if,
because of their insecurities.
yes, that they projected back to us. It's like a vicious cycle, but that's absolutely wonderful what you just said, Amy. I think in a way, a lot of the things that I managed to heal in my life, and the moment I knew that it was actually less of a open wound, but more of a scar that doesn't hurt as much, but is more of a lesson. It's a reminder of what I went through, is when I was able of sharing that with others and speaking about it without feeling, it's not about what I'm feeling at the moment, but without holding back. Like it's like I'm just sharing another side of who I am. It's like without judging myself, without fearing what the other people even would say about it. Like even
That's
if I met
huge.
someone who canceled. So yeah, I deeply resonate with what you said. I think it's absolutely key.
And I'm so glad you added that very critical piece, that you don't share it with just anybody, because it can completely backfire and shut the whole thing down, and even have you repress it more, because if it's not received in a non-judgmental, heart listening way, that like I said, it can just completely backfire. So you have to be very astute as to who you share these things with, and back to safety again, right? So just beautiful. Fatima-Zahra, my amazing, amazing holistic astrologer, amazingly wise for your human years friend. How can people find you, and where would you like to direct people that are listening and watching?
Well, if anyone resonates with my teachings, with astrology, if anyone wants to get to know themselves better, I am all for it, for discussion, for working with you guys. You can find me on Instagram at Living Simply with 2 Y's, or on my website, livingsimply.com. I also have a YouTube channel where I share videos on symbols, on astrology, and other topics related to esotericism, spirituality, and self-transformation. So I am really, really happy to connect with anyone who wants to discuss about these topics that I'm absolutely passionate about.
I love it. And I will add that her YouTube channel is fantastic. It's one of my favorite. It's full of so many amazing just informative videos and just information. And definitely check out episode 85, The Power and Significance of Esoteric Symbols, Sacred Geometry and Biogeometry, with Fatima-Zahra, who was on that episode. That's 85, to get more of her. And do check her out. She's just fantastic, both on Instagram, YouTube. I subscribe to her YouTube channel. It's wonderful. And as always, I learned so much from you. I look forward to, I think, once again, having you back on the show, because we have more to talk about.
Anytime, that would be my pleasure.
Okay, everybody. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, or you know anybody that you think might enjoy or benefit from it, please share the show if you got benefit out of it and you think it can help people. Thank you for leaving a quick review or rating, and I can't wait to see your post tags and inspiration from the show anywhere. You can find me as well, FitAmyTV, as well as amyfournier.com, and my YouTube channel, Awakening Aphrodite, FitAmyTV on YouTube. Okay, everybody, until next time, have a great day, night, whatever's next. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. FitAmyTV.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FitAmyTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.